mental health is not something that people are very open to talk about. These are, oof. All right, let's talk mental health. If you're new, I'm Sona, a beauty and lifestyle creator. I'm also the founder of Sona Cosmetics, a beauty brand. And I've gotten so many requests, not only on my YouTube channel, but also on Instagram, to share all of the tips and tricks that I've learned over the past 6 or 7 months, because I have been really talking a lot about spirituality and about mental health and what I've been doing to sort of better my overall mental health. And there's just been a lot of interest in that topic in general. So today we're gonna dive into it. I have my notes here in case I forget anything. I just want this to be as helpful and informative as possible. So before we get into the actual tips, I wanna mention 2 things. Number 1, I've learned that we are truly responsible for our mental health and happiness. We can take charge and manage that. Number 2 is, what is happiness? So defining happiness. And I've learned this through the past 6 months through self-help books, my therapist, and just really diving deep into who I really am. I've learned that happiness is contentment. So everyone's happiness is so different. So what defines your happiness is not necessarily going to define mine. When you say I'm unhappy, that means you're not content with your current situation. And so keeping that in mind kind of helps you understand that you are in charge, you are in control, and you can change that for yourself. To an extent, of course, but we're gonna get into that in a second. So number 1, I have to say, I have to credit self-help books, because when I started feeling sad and just kind of like in my own thoughts, I just wasn't sure exactly why. I mean, I had my reasons, of course, we all do, but I just felt like there was something deeper and I wanted to get a better understanding. And so I started diving really deep into self-help books, and over the past, I would say like 4 months especially, I've been trying to read a book and a half to 2 books a month. And I find it so helpful. You pick up so many tips and tricks. And if you're not a big reader, then you can listen to it. I mean, there are so many great resources out there that you can just like click a button and listen to a book. I feel like self-help books really helped me sort of manage my anxiety. Another thing that it kind of helped me with is the fact that I'm not alone, because I feel like mental health is not something that people are very open to talk about, especially with like different cultures. There's definitely a stigma around it. And so reading these books, you really understand that so many people go through it. So many people go through sadness, they go through anxiety, some people go through depression. And so you're not alone when you are feeling this way. And so I feel like reading books and getting people's experiences, just learning that so many people go through it, just already makes me feel so much better. So highly recommend books. And I will go over all of my favorites at the end of the video, so stay tuned because I don't want this section to get really long. Number 2, and this might be the most important, and that's exercise. I feel like exercise is one of those things that you hear all the time, just like you hear people saying drink lots of water. It's one of those things that you hear over and over and over again. It can seem a bit gimmicky, but of course exercise is tied to so many health benefits, not just for mental health, of course, for your physical as well. But what I've learned over the past, I would say again, 6 to 7 months, is that exercising regularly completely changes your mental state. And obviously there are so many facts that prove how beneficial exercise is for your mental health and happiness. And I have a little thing here that I can read for you. And there's also a TED Talk video that I'll link below because I've also found that really helpful. But when you exercise, your brain releases chemicals like BDNF and endorphins, which boosts your mood, self-esteem, and promotes happiness. So this is something that I grabbed from the TED Talk show, and I think that it was just so incredible because we obviously know that exercise releases endorphins. We hear it, but he really goes into what BDNF is, which I won't get into it, but it's a chemical that releases in your brain that basically promotes happiness. And personally, when I was exercising, 2 to 3 times a week to look good, to stay skinny, whatever the case is, I didn't see that big of a difference. But when I started moving my body every day and shifting my mindset from exercising to look good to exercising to feel happy, everything just completely changed for me. And so think of exercising as moving your body every single day. Whatever that means to you, that could mean taking a 30-minute walk. That can mean doing a 20-minute yoga. Anything that you can do to move your body. And so what I learned in the beginning was that I took it slowly. I started doing yoga, and then from yoga I started doing my cardio, but then now I I love it so much, and the benefits has been so just enormous that I almost made it a habit to move my body in some sort of a yoga form, stretching or whatnot in the morning, and then be sure to do some sort of cardio as well. And I don't do 45 minutes to an hour every single day. A lot of days I actually just do 20 minutes, but even the 20 minutes makes such a huge difference. But just try to move your body daily and you will see such a huge difference that you will get addicted to it. And when you're exercising, try not to say things like, oh my God, this is so hard, I can't do this, because your brain follows what you say and looks for those things. And so if you keep saying that, your brain is gonna automatically think that you don't like exercising and you're just eventually gonna give up. So even if it's hard, just pretend and out loud say, this is amazing. I'm doing something great for my body and for my mental health. Another thing that I want to mention with exercise is that when you exercise, you automatically eat healthier. It's just crazy. They just go hand in hand. Every time I exercise, for some reason, I make better choices with my meals. Every time I don't exercise, I'm just like, I almost forget how difficult it is. And I'm just like totally fine with having a burger. I just feel like exercise is so high up there in the things to do to just promote a healthier lifestyle in general. I hope that you guys will move your body every single day, even if it's, like I said, 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, number 3, and this is something I recently started implementing. I think it was just like therapy really inspired me to do this. And with my therapist, we came up with this plan, which has been working for me really well. And that is a gratitude list in the morning. So I do a few things in the mornings. I wake up about an hour early and I have an hour of me time and self-care time. And what that looks like for me is drinking tons of water to hydrate my body since it was dehydrated for about 8+ hours. And then I make my cup of coffee to dehydrate my body again. That makes no sense, but I love coffee, so I do this all the time. So I make my cup of coffee and I start listing things that I'm grateful for. And it's not something that I have to just verbally say. I do have to actually write it down. So I have a gratitude journal that I'll write this down in. And most gratitude journals promote writing a list at the end of the day, but my therapist said that that's actually like not good because you want to start writing things down first thing in the morning. You know, you're just a little bit more grateful throughout the day, which makes a lot of sense. And so the first thing I do is write down 5 to 10 things that I'm grateful for. And it's simple things like, a lot of times my coffee's in there, just I'm so grateful for this cup of coffee and it's, you know, it's delicious. I'm so grateful for how bright my apartment is and all of the light that I get in. I'm so grateful that I'm able to read every single day. I'm so grateful for all these little things. Again, they're not huge things, they're little things, but it just promotes a start to your day. And so I find that that's been really, really helpful. So after I read a little bit, I will go into tip number 4, which is meditate. So meditation for me was probably one of the hardest things to implement. I would always say things like, I don't know how to meditate. I don't know what I'm doing it wrong. And all of these things make no sense because there's no such thing as meditating wrong. Meditating is simply focusing on your breathing and obviously just being quiet and still for the 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, however much you can do it. So you basically want to sit down and try to not think about anything. And if it's difficult for you, what you can do is focus on your breathing. And if you can't focus on your breathing, what you want to do is just in your mind say rising, rising, rising when you're breathing in. So in your head, you just say rising, rising, rising as you're inhaling. When you're exhaling, you say falling, falling, falling. So what that does is basically your brain focuses on that. I learned this technique from Pickup Limes. She has a YouTube channel. I'll link that video below if I can find it, but if not, you can take a look at her channel. But basically, she learned this from a meditation teacher, and I found that technique so helpful. So meditation has also helped a lot. Last but not least, I would say number 5 is therapy. So I want to talk about this because I feel like there's such a huge stigma around therapy. It's like, you know, if you're seeing a therapist, there must be something wrong with you, or you might be crazy, or you have major issues, or you're depressed or whatever. And it's so crazy because what got me into therapy is truly my curiosity. I found that through my readings, I was really into understanding the mind and how it works and understanding the self, which is the spirit. So I was talking to a friend one day and she said that she's been seeing this therapist for years. And I was like, can I have her number? Because I kind of want to like test this out, try this out. I started talking to her, and I remember the very first session was awkward for me, but they just make you feel so comfortable to just open up that it just felt so therapeutic and so amazing afterwards. I personally recommend it if you can afford it, and if it's something that you can do. It kind of helps you understand yourself more, and that has been the biggest sort of takeaway for me. Is going into therapy, I thought I knew myself, but now that I'm in therapy, I find that I really didn't know myself, and I'm learning so much about who I am and what makes me content and what makes me happy. And that's been so eye-opening. And I've also just found myself to be a lot more spiritual. I don't know, I feel more connected with myself, if that makes sense. So it's been a really, really beautiful experience for me, and I highly recommend it. So those are my 5 tips. Now I'm gonna get into self-help books and what books I recommend. So these are all the books that I read, except I'm missing one because I gave it to a friend, but I'll talk about that as well. I'm gonna start by recommending the number 1 book that I feel like really was eye-opening and kind of helped me understand the difference between self and brain and mind, and that voice that's always talking to you. Usually it's negative things. So that book is The Untethered Soul. I found this book so fascinating. I'm gonna read the description for each book so you guys can have a better understanding, but this is a must read. I highly recommend it. I'm gonna link all of the books in the description box, but the description for this book is: the untethered soul begins by walking you through your relationship with your thoughts and emotions, helping you uncover the source and fluctuations of your inner energy. It then dives into what you can do to free yourself from the habitual thoughts, emotions, and energy patterns that limit your consciousness. Finally, with perfect clarity, this book opens the door to a life lived in the freedom of your innermost being. This basically explains what the book is about. All about inner energy, spirit, mind. And once you read this, you are more conscious of that voice. And when it starts to tell you things, you kind of stop and say, no, that's actually not true. That's not who I am. And so I highly recommend reading this book, you guys. It's so amazing. Number 2 is Oprah's book, What I Know for Sure. So this isn't necessarily considered a self-help book because it's kind of her story in a sense, but there's so much wisdom in here and there's so much knowledge that I found this book to be one of the best books I've ever read. Like, I want to actually read this annually because, again, each chapter, which they're not even chapters, they're like little sections, is just full of wisdom. So this is another book that I highly recommend. There's a small description for this, so I'll just quickly read it, but it says, I know for sure your journey begins with a choice to get up, step out, and live fully. I would say that this is another spiritual book, just understanding that happiness is truly within and you are in control of that. Sorry, my camera died, but what I was trying to say is that it's such an easy read that you will go through it in like a few days. I read it in like a week, but I was always going back and reading little sections again and again because it was just so amazing. So the rest of these books aren't necessarily self-help books, they're more spiritual books, but I found that to be very helpful in a sense as well. So I'll just go through them real quick because I know there's been a lot of interest in my books and why I love them. So the other one that I want to talk about is called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. I'm sure you guys have heard of this, but this is basically all about tidying up your place and keeping things that truly spark joy in your life. So you basically go through each section of your house and you pick up things one by one and say, does this spark joy in my life? The answer is yes, you keep it. The answer is no, you toss it. If the answer is I don't know, you most likely should toss it. And you do that with every single room in your home. I started with my closet, of course, and it just felt so good to get rid of things that I just didn't need anymore. And then I moved on to my kitchen, I moved on to my beauty room. I just feel so much better now because everything is just so organized and everything that I own sparks joy. So I love it, I highly recommend it. These 2 books are by the same author, Brian Lee Weiss, and he's a therapist, and basically he practices hypnotherapy, and I've kind of talked about this on stories, so if you guys are here from Instagram, sorry if this is repetitive. So both of these books are about reincarnation, it's about spirituality, It's that we're all here for a reason. It's just very, very beautiful. They're both beautiful stories, but he basically does all of this through hypnotherapy. So his clients go through hypnosis and see themselves in previous lives. It's fascinating. And if you only can pick one, I would do Many Lives, Many Masters. The second one is called Only Love is Real. And this one is about two soulmates that basically find each other through hypnotherapy. They kind of like find each other, which is really interesting. So they're both his clients and he finds similarities in their stories. Some parts of it you're like, is this real or is this not? But I still think there's a lot of great messages in here and I highly recommend it. The other book that I don't have with me, I gave it to a friend, is called Embraced by the Light, and it's again in the same kind of spiritual genre. It's about a woman who basically dies in the hospital for about 2 hours, and in that 2 hours she travels and sees what heaven is like. It's a true story, it's her story, but of course some people believe it, some people don't believe it, but it's just interesting because all of these stories have a very similar kind of element to it, and that's that when they die, they see light and they kind of just go towards the light. And I don't know, that I found that to be very interesting, but that story is pretty fascinating as well. The book that I'm reading now is called Getting the Love You Want, and this I would say is another self-help book because this is written by two therapists who are married, basically dedicate 12 plus years of their career trying to help couples and figure out why marriages don't last or why relationships don't last, because they both have gone through divorces themselves. So this is their second marriage. So I just started reading this book recently, and so I don't want to talk too much about it because I've only read literally that much, but so far it's been so fascinating. It explains that so much of our arguments and so much of our behaviors are tied to our childhood and just experiences that we've had as children, and the things that we're missing from our childhood is what we're trying to compensate in our adult, I guess, relationships. And so so far it's been really interesting. I'm really excited to read this, and towards the end of the book there's also an exercise you can do, whether that's by yourself or with a spouse, but basically it's an exercise which I'm really excited to get to. It's also good if you have kids because you kind of understand what to do, what not to do. So far I really enjoy this. But that is it for all of my book recommendations. If you're still here, thank you. I hope you guys found this video helpful, and let me know if you guys want to see more videos like this. I'm really into this kind of spiritual health and wellness journey in my life right now. So other than that, I love you guys so much. I wish you nothing but the best. Sending you guys positive vibes, positive energy. I'm so into energy right now. It's like crazy. Pay attention to energy because it's a real thing. And yeah, I love you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye.